Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Good Old Fashioned Philly Wrestling Podcast. My name is Rick Reinhart, and I got to be honest with you guys, man. It's an honor to even be doing this podcast with such a great title as the Good Old Fashioned Philly Wrestling Podcast. It's kind of hard to say. It's kind of a tongue twister sometimes. But today, we are going to be reviewing two matches that I witnessed from the Stu Hart tribute show from 1995. I'm sorry, it was an 50th anniversary show. So we're going to go right down the list here. I'm going to do the matches that I saw, and then I'm going to go back downstairs and watch some more. We got to see Chris Benoit versus Louis Spicolli, and I really thought about doing a whole episode here for Louis, being that we are here in Philadelphia, where Louis Spicolli left a serious imprint and mark on the wrestling world in a very short time in ECW. And I know Louis Spicolli was a Southern California wrestler who also could do the Lucha Libre stuff, because in that area the Lucha Libre stuff comes in a lot. It's right there, you know what I mean? Not far from Mexico. When I was down in San Diego, I ended up in Mexico by accident, and it was no problem getting over the border, but it was, it took me a little bit to get back, man. I got pulled over the whole nine, man. So check it. Chris Benoit versus Louis Spicolli. This was an interesting match watching it, because I've learned to love Louis Spicolli's style in the ring, and he was going up against Benoit, who was, one of the most, what's the word I'm looking for here, intense individuals in the history of the wrestling business. That's all I can really truly say about the man and his work, because his work is fucking phenomenal. And I'm not trying to big up the dude like that, but I was always a fan of Dynamite Kid, and watching Benoit is like watching him, man. I don't know what else to say about that besides that. Some of the way that match ended was really cool. Just kind of seeing how these different kinds of finishes are being used on this show, and just anything from the mid '90s, late '90s, '80s, all that stuff. It's so great to see the crowd and to see how people are not on smartphones. It really does make that much difference for me as somebody who's watching. You know what I mean? Now I'm going to do the match between the 1-2-3 Kid versus Keith Hart. This was an interesting match, man, because I could have swore that Keith was going to go over, especially with the 1-2-3 Kid being the heel. And I got to say, man, that was Sean Waltman in his prime. The 1-2-3 Kid, Six-Pac, X-Pac. I know X-Pac had a good run when he came back to the Attitude Era, but Six-Pac didn't do much in WCW because of his injury. He, however, was involved in probably the biggest revolutionary change in the history of the wrestling business, which was the NWO. But seeing the 1-2-3 Kid in his prime here in 1995, you could see the different levels of pro wrestling that was going on at that time in this match. Keith Hart, son of Stu Hart, brother of Brett and Owen, Bruce. You know what I mean? You could see how his Canadian wrestling going up against the 1-2-3 Kids, let's say, I guess you could say big time wrestling at that time. Being that WWF was the big time, still is the big time, and to be able to perform at that level, you got to be good. And the 1-2-3 Kid comes out swinging on this match, and I remember hearing about the 1-2-3 Kid in PWI before he became the 1-2-3 Kid, when he defeated Razor Ramon. I believe that was on a Monday Night Raw, if I'm not mistaken. I remember watching it when it happened. But yeah, so I remember hearing about the 1-2-3 Kid, like the Lightning Kid, and he had a couple other names back then. I don't want to say the wrong one, so I'm not going to say it. But I'd have to brush up on that. But just saying, the 1-2-3 Kid in 1995 was on a certain level of performing that you could only get to if you're performing almost every night. And those guys in the WWF, especially at that time, they were on the road like 300 days a year. So it shows. Now, there are some other matches that I'm going to get to. We're going to see Razor Ramon versus Owen Hart, which will be a good one, I'm sure. Terry Funk and Dory Funk Jr. versus Brian Pillman and Keith Hart. I can't wait to review that match. Any footage of Pillman, I just fucking love, man. And I'm, over the years, I've learned that Terry Funk and Dory Funk, they when I was growing up, they weren't my favorite guys, but you learn over the years to truly, truly appreciate them. And then, I was there for the Terry Funk ECW stuff. And at first, I didn't understand why he was getting pushed as hard as he was. But then you start seeing the guy and how he reinvented himself, and it's fucking amazing. I mean, Terry Funk is a fucking legend. And I'm going to surely call that match later tonight. And I can't wait to see this rematch, too. Davey Boy Smith versus Bret Hart. I remember earlier, 1993, I believe it was. It was either 92 or 93. Davey Boy and Bret Hart in the Wembley Stadium match, and I was a huge. Let me just say it like this: I was a huge British Bulldogs fan of Dynamite Kid Jr. Dynamite Kid especially, and Davey Boy Smith especially. So when Davey Boy Smith went solo and he came back with the braids, I was all over that, man, and I was rooting for him against Bret Hart in that match. Also because Bret Hart was the guy who beat my guy Kurt Hennig for the Intercontinental title. So when Davey Boy Smith won that Intercontinental title that night, I mean, that's what I wanted as a fan, and it made me very happy. And I know the story behind the match now has come out on YouTube, and that's fucking crazy shit, man. Those fucking guys are crazy, man. But, yeah, man, seeing Louis doing his thing, I love watching old Louis Spicolli matches every time. What an underrated worker. Tragic about how he passed. But, it's one of those weird things, man. I don't ever try and justify death or anything like that, but Louis Spicolli is going to be forever remembered in pro wrestling because of he went out when he was really working hard and on fire, and it's great that ECW is the reason why he's going to be remembered in that way, because they were on it even back then. They renamed the Death Valley Driver the Spicoli Driver. It's things like that, man. I mean, that's beautiful, man. I don't know what else to say. Yeah. So there it is. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the Good Old Fashioned Philly Wrestling Podcast. My name is Rick Reinhardt, and I got to say, Philly Wrestling lives forever.